Uvaženi gledalci, dobro večer. Gledate podcast Perspektive na televiziji K1. Naši večerašnji gosti su bivši ambasador u Srbiji i Crnoj Gori, pre toga u Saveznoj Republici Jugoslaviji, njegova ekscelencija gospodin Vilijam Montgomeri i njegova supruga, koja je bila tokom godina vrlo poznata našoj javnosti, doktorka Lynn Montgomery. Good evening. I'm very, very happy to be your host. I'm very happy that you accepted to be part of our podcast. I would like to start with, not with the introduction, but with your recent book.
Yes.
You wrote, as we say in Serbia, in two hands by two hands, this book, Undiplomatic Lives. It is not an ordinary book. I was, very interested about it, and all my hopes and my expectations were fulfilled and more. And I would add that about 10 years ago, you published a very, very interesting book related with your special mission here. This is your public biography of you too.
Correct.
Related with Serbia, predominantly Serbia and the region, when ovations die down, if I quote correctly.
That is correct.
What was the reason for you two, who are still active, still full of energy, to write this kind of book and to publish it in Serbia?
Well, as we talked about before the cameras, our children were with us this whole time, from the time they were born. Our youngest took her first plane trip when she was 6 weeks old, when we were going to Croatia, I believe, or Bulgaria. But anyway, we took her through Frankfurt and there, and all three had to go through schools that were different. And we would come home and say, well, we're leaving tomorrow to go to Bulgaria or someplace else, leaving all the friends behind. And I always worried about that because my childhood had been in one place the whole time, and gave me great security. And I always like to go back every once in a while to see my old town. They don't have an old town. They don't have any place to go. And I felt badly about it. And so one of the main purposes for writing this is for my family and for their children. If they have any interest, maybe they won't. But if they have an interest, to see how we lived, what we did in our lives during the time they were growing up.
That's very, very good. Why the title, Undiplomatic Lives? They were very diplomatic, as I noticed here.
Just in answer to the first question, if I may, if that's okay, I would say that there's an English saying of don't explain, don't complain. So this is instilled into us as English. But on the other hand, if you don't seize your narrative, other people can seize it for you. So sometimes it's important to say, this is how things happened. This is the truth. And at some point in your life, not always, but at some point in your life to say, okay, this is how it was. But the title Undiplomatic Lives was a slight argument between us because Bill wanted to call it Diplomatic Lives. And I said, I don't think there was a lot diplomatic at times about us or about the way he did things. So we agreed on it, and people seem to like the title because it's a bit self-depreciating.
But if I can interject, as an example, we were in Bulgaria, and it was a time that there were serious protests against the government that we were morally supporting, perhaps more than morally. But in any case, we got word at the last minute there was going to be a major demonstration at the Communist Party headquarters, which is in the center of Belgrade, all by itself. There's this big building. Yeah, Sofia. And we were supposed to go to a dinner party with all these other ambassadors and number 2, black tie, etc. And Lynn called to cancel at about 5 o'clock to say, we can't come because we have to go to the demonstration. And these diplomats were absolutely horrified. To them, it was a scandal that we would have accepted and then canceled for that reason. So we went to this demonstration, and we've got photos of it. It was so moving and fantastic because people were ringed all around the Communist Party headquarters. They had broken in. They had thrown file drawers out. Police cars had come with sirens on and drove around and saw the crowds and drove away. And the building burned. And that was a historical thing. It's something that will stick in my mind forever, having watched that. And that's what we did rather than go to a diplomatic party, which none of them could understand. They were horrified. So when you look at non-diplomatic lives, that sort of explains that atmosphere.
Was it that burning down of Socialist Party of Bulgaria or Communist Party? Because I think it happened twice. Was it in late 80s or in early 90s?
This was the early 80s, and it was actually, at that time, it was the Communist Party. But what happened is it was the Communist Party. They realized that they had lost a lot of support, and so they changed their name to the Bulgarian Socialist Party.
Yes.
So,
yes. Your career, but opening years during first decade was, as I would say, classical career of high American official or future politician. You spent 3 years in army, 1 year in Vietnam.
Yes.
You were very young then. Had you ambitions to be diplomat and ambassador, or it was some kind of your choice during the 80s?
I grew up until I was about 25, having not a clue what I wanted to do with my life. It was a source of great frustration because I would be at a university and all these students would be studying, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. It was very frustrating. But I got out of the university. I graduated with the lowest possible grade point average to graduate, 2.001, because I really didn't study. I rode my motorcycle and played tennis.
You were young.
I was young because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was drafted. And I knew at that time that I would end up going to Vietnam. So, in all my wisdom, the recruiter said, well, if you enlist for a third year, you can choose your specialty. So I chose intelligence. And so I stayed in 3 years. And of course, when we got our assignments, I was assigned to Vietnam. And my job was to drive classified documents in a Jeep from place to place in the Saigon area, drop them off, pick other ones up all day long. And I did that for 4 days, Monday through Thursday. And then on Friday, we were told we had an inspection, which was crazy because everybody paid a quarter. I got a Vietnamese boy to go out, wash the car, and bring it back. Anyway, we were waiting around in the heat for about a half an hour for the stupid inspection. And I said to myself, I'm never going to do this again. Never, ever, never. So I went out from the inspection. I went into our administrative area, and there was a sign on the billboard. It said Special Forces wants intelligence people. So I signed up right then. And the next day, very next day, I was carrying my duffel bag from Saigon to the headquarters in the train of Special Forces. And you had to walk through some sand to get there. I'm walking through the sand with my duffel bag, and I'm thinking, you know, maybe this wasn't the smartest thing after all. But anyway, they sent me to a Special Forces camp of about 12 Americans. It was called an A-team, and it was right on the Cambodian border. And the idea is that we would send agents into Cambodia to see what the Vietnamese were bringing down the trail, etc. And I spent a year there, and it helped me to grow up in many, many ways. But it also made me see that we were going to lose that war, for sure.
Were you aware in that very moment
I was aware.
That would be the outcome?
I was aware a few months after I arrived in country. And when I saw that anything that needed to be done had to be done by American troops, that the South Vietnamese troops were pathetic. The North Vietnamese troops were very efficient and very good and very committed. And to me, it was so absolutely clear we were going to lose. And that's the start of my interest in foreign affairs and diplomacy. Because I thought, if I can see this so easily, so quickly now, what was my government doing sending us here in the first place? It was ridiculous.
And how it happened that you specialized for Eastern Europe, for Balkans, for Bulgaria, Serbia, Croatia, Russia?
It's your fault. No, it's your fault.
That's very good and lapidary answer.
It's your fault. No, because I did my diploma for my master's degree on trade with the Soviet Union and Soviet bloc. But it was rather random that my first assignment was Belgrade. I had never been in Europe. I only had been in Vietnam. And I took a ferry from Italy and landed in Dubrovnik about 6 a.m. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was so beautiful. And I fell in love with Dubrovnik. And then I came to Belgrade, which was part of Yugoslavia then. And I loved it. I mean, most people say the first assignment you have in the Foreign Service is the best one. That was certainly the case for me. I fell in love with this region. And I went by car everywhere, all over this region. And I can tell you, it was marvelous. It was wonderful. And at that time, mid-70s, there was a lot of hope in the country for the future. And people could travel, and it was nice. I liked it a lot. And that formed the basis of my career. And so I spent almost all of my assignments when I had a choice in this region.
Dr. Montgomeri, now you live in Cavtat, nearby Dubrovnik. When did you first time visit former Yugoslavia or the region, maybe?
Well, when Bill and I met in Africa, he asked me to meet him in Venice. And after Venice, he said, let's drive through Yugoslavia. And
the best way.
Yes, so that was 1985. And then, of course, we came back to Zagreb in very early 98. So, and I felt the same way. And when I saw Savtat, when I had that view of Savtat, I thought that's not a bad place to retire.
By all means. I noticed while I was reading this book and trying to find as much as possible for a short period of time about you two, that I thought that your career was probably planned when you were in very, very, very early ages of your life.
No,
because I find somewhere that your primary education was related with the economy.
Yes.
And that you were the first, or maybe one of the first female
on the stock
worked
exchange.
on the stock exchange.
Yes. I thought it would be two, but when I finished an undergraduate degree, I did a minor in philosophy, and then I really liked philosophy. I really found myself at home in it, and then I did a master's in Sofia. And then, my doctorate in Zagreb, and that was for me. I like answers, or not answers. I like puzzles, and I like various answers to a certain puzzle. I like, that's the idea of philosophy. You can hold a number of thoughts in your head without the idea of religion in it, where there's a right and wrong.
I noticed that you were active at universities wherever you were at service or with your husband.
Yes, and after
in Sofia
and
Zagreb as well. That's amazing. I cannot recall the wife of diplomat who was so active and so ambitious in order to learn something new. You had 3 children in 2000 when you started your PhD at the University of Zagreb.
We had 3 teenagers.
3 teenagers, even worse.
Even worse. It's like having 6 children.
But I should also say that the Foreign Service is a cult of people. I mean, special ways of doing things and everything. And you work your way up from junior officer up to deputy chief of mission and ambassador, etc. And it takes a long time, and you learn all these methods. And Lynn came in, parachuted in at a high level, where I was already the number 2. And I think being a foreigner, a Brit, whose ways are extremely different than Americans, and learning our culture was one of her real challenges. Is that fair?
Well, yes. I mean, the English culture is very old, very established. And then you meet a country that thinks that they're the most powerful and that they know what's right. And it's a bit of a balance to combine the two, to keep the people in the American embassy happy that you are following the way that they do things, but also at the same time not to get submerged in it, that you can't strike out and do a few things on your own. It's a tightrope.
Yes, by all means. By all means, very, very complex task, by all means.
Yes.
Your Excellency, may I pose you one detective question? Was former Yugoslavia killed, or she died of natural causes?
I can tell you that we, as a government, wanted Yugoslavia to stay together again. We fought very hard to do so. It sounds sort of crazy that our President Bush absolutely loved Gorbachev. Absolutely loved. He thought Gorbachev was the model. And Gorbachev had his problems in the Soviet Union and its possible breakup. And Bush thought that would be horrible if the Soviet Union broke up. all those different republics. Who knows what will be chaos? There's nuclear weapons around. And therefore, we don't want Yugoslavia to break up. It would set a very bad example. That is the complete and stupid reason why we were against it. But the winds of change were strong, as you know, all over Eastern Europe then, including here. And here, you could speak out more freely than you could during the Tito years about everything. And in Croatia in particular, but Slovenia as well, they started to talk about their own parties, their own independence and stuff like that. And I found that we could not stop it, that the impulse was too strong. And it was supported by European countries. The Germans in particular had a great interest in Slovenia and Croatia becoming independent. So it was against our desire. But then when you combine that with the horror that started to take place in a number of the regions, Bosnia, Croatia in particular, it made that come about more easily, for sure.
That kind of testimony, I would say, is common to overwhelming majority of your colleagues, not only from State Department, but from Foreign Office, from Quai d'Orsay, even from Berlin, even though they were in favor of independence of Slovenia and Croatia. It's obvious according to sources, contemporary sources. But how come that all financing of federal state were stopped and cut in 1989 then?
Our financing of
Yugoslavia. Entire SWIFT was made towards republics.
Well, I think, first of all, that Slobodan Milosevic, if you had to give one person most responsible for the violence and even the breakup, it would be Slobodan Milosevic. I knew him well. I knew him when he was a banker, for years when he was a banker. But he was a politician, and he saw the way to power was to use nationalism. And as you know very well, he went into Kosovo. He took away their independent status, as well as Vojvodinas. And he gave a famous speech down there where he told the Kosovo Serbs, the Kosovo Albanians, won't beat you anymore. And he became a nationalist. And that is, I think, the primary reason why this all went the way it did.
Yes, but if you compare his career with any career of any Prime Minister of Israel, you would find that they were much more aggressive and much more warlike.
Please don't get us started on Israel. What's happening there is disgraceful.
Not only now, but 40 years ago.
Neither of us are in favor of what Israel is doing. We have a daughter who lives in Lebanon, which gives us even more reason to be unhappy about it. But the fact that not only is Israel doing this, but they're using bombs purchased or given by us to do it, makes us crazy. We feel helpless to stop it, but it's a terrible thing.
I would say that maybe your impressions as a partially independent person, because you were not involved in diplomatic activities during the 90s, would be also very, very precious for our conversation today. I always thought that Yugoslav wars were not premeditated. But now we see that there were some clandestine movements, especially in Croatia, among Bosnian Muslims. But in Serbia, Milosevic, he won elections in 1990 with parole we want peace, with parole, with us, there would not be uncertainty in future, Vuk Drašković was the guy who wanted, greater Serbia and so on. How it happened that everything was changing a bit, and that United States, and not only United States, Western powers, did not gave their best as they have given for, preservation of Bosnia, Northern Macedonia, the Ukraine, and so on. Yugoslavia was forgotten, even though the United States were the first country which recognized it among the great powers.
Well, I would say that maybe in the region in the late 80s, you had a sort of trifecta, not only in Serbia, but in Croatia and in Bosnia. It wasn't just the rhetoric from here. There was rhetoric everywhere. And I see some allegory in a way with our situation in the United States, is that if you engender fear in people, if you tell them that different groups are other, they're different, they're against you, they're going to hurt you. If we don't do A, they will do B. And having been in Croatia in the late 80s, in the late 80s and then again in the 90s, you could feel the fear post-war. You could feel that people had done all sorts of things, said all sorts of things. Their lives had been completely upended, and they were thinking, what happened? Ordinary people were thinking what happened. And I think this rhetoric of fear, of differentiation, of you're in this ethnic group, if we let you be in a certain country, we can be overwhelmed. I think that is my predominant feeling about the beginnings of this war. You couldn't have done it without people buying into it. There wouldn't have been enough just to have had the rhetoric.
By all means.
But I would say there was an excellent CIA report done 2 years before the fighting started. You probably
prophetic,
read it.
Of course. Prophetic.
Yes, because it's been declassified. It was a brilliant report. It almost entirely accurately predicted what would happen unless we did something. It predicted the violence, the breakup, everything. So we had this 2 years in advance, and the West was unwilling to put a small contingent of forces in to prevent this violence from happening. The entire West, there was not one country that was willing to put one soldier in, which was such a grievous mistake.
You were among the diplomats who were very active and involved in Dayton peace talks. Are you now satisfied with the outcome, and do you think that it was a success?
No. I just gave a talk in Banja Luka on this very subject, and I was saying that they are terrible because first of all, you had 3 ethnic groups there. Each had a claim, each had rights. And the United States, it's a different atmosphere, as you probably know. You come to the United States from anywhere in the world, as long as you come legally now, and you're welcomed as an American. So you may be from Nigeria or England, and you will be considered an American. And the emphasis is not at all on the past or ethnicity. It's on you're American now. And so that is in our mindset of how the world works. And so when we were putting together the Dayton peace agreements, our assumption was that what was being done was really a truce agreement, because over time, all these ethnic problems would melt away. There would be a stronger central government, and everything would be fine. And the current High Representative tried to impose that because he saw that a lot of the restrictions under Dayton were holding country back. And he had the power on paper to make the changes. But he didn't have the authority any longer. And therefore, when he tried to do things like sanction Dodik, etc., it didn't work because he didn't have the force to back him up. And what I have been advocating for some time is you need a new system set up. I would, first of all, I would say you need 3 entities.
Yes, I read your very, very famous article in the New York Times, and you were accused later on for such funny things, that you are ideologist of Greater Serbia, some Jugarašar.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny, and awful, because you're a citizen of the United States and you are loyal to your country. I think it's obvious. However, if we agree that there is no violence which could be approved in order to preserve country, even though the states were established on yes. tremendous violence.
Yes.
Then, as Yugoslavia was not supported by force, then Bosnia also should not be supported by force. I think it's.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think
it's a matter of justice.
What I would do is I would have 3 entities. One for the Croats, for sure, and then a 5-year period to see if the entities got along together. And after 5 years, any of the entities would have a option for referendum on being independent or not. I think that's the logical way to go ahead, rather than to try to keep 3 entities together who don't get along, who have major differences. And the major difference being, as you know, the Bosnian Muslims feel in their heart they fought to protect the whole of Bosnia. And that's what they're owed for having fought so hard, for being the major victims. Whereas I believe the Serbs would like to have an independent Republic of Srpska, either joining with Serbia or being independent. So anyway, that's my easy solution, which is very easy to sit across from you and say, but it's very, very hard to implement because the Bosnian Muslims would fight like hell. So to achieve this requires the strong support of the international community.
Yes, and now borders between entities and cantons, they are, I think, very, very similar to ethnic division.
Yes.
It is not anymore, a country which looks like its geographical map. Ethnographical map looks like, tiger skin right. or so on, unfortunately. But that could not be, we could not make time go back, and now it is so. Regarding Kosovo, I would like to ask you. You know that since 1992, Milošević's party, Socialist Party of Serbia, they did not have a big margin in our parliament. They had small majority. How come that United States and Western powers did not ask Albanians to go to the polls and to topple down Milošević? Because then Serbia would be country similar to Macedonia, with every government should consist Albanian component, and those 30 or 40 MPs would be crucial for our political stability.
Well, of course, that Milošević took away Kosovo's automatic province status, which meant also that in schools, the children could not speak Albanian.
He made that autonomy smaller, if you allowed. That autonomy was even under the Constitution of 1990 very broad. Serbs in Croatia would be happy with it.
Well, the point is we cared more about Kosovo for 8 to 10 years than you can imagine. What we saw was that the wars, the violent wars in Croatia and in Bosnia were self-contained. They were horrific, no doubt about it. But they weren't going outside the borders of those two countries, really. Yes, there's some refugees and stuff, but basically it was within those two borders. But if you look at Kosovo, with its history, with its boundaries, with Bulgaria there, with Albania around, Macedonia around, and Greece, I mean, all of them having previous histories dealing with Kosovo. We had a terrible fear that if a war actually started in Kosovo, like it did in Bosnia and Croatia, that it could spread well beyond the borders of Yugoslavia. That was our fear, and we felt it very strongly. And of course, in the first couple of years, I was heavily involved in negotiating with Ibrahim Rugova, who was the Croatian Albanian leader, and he was a peaceful guy. And so we would talk to him, and then we would go talk to Milosevic, and we would make no progress on schools or anything. And then the Kosovo Albanians got arms from their colleagues who were working in Western Europe, particularly Switzerland. They got arms. And so this turned in the middle, 1993, 4, whatever. So at some point, this turned into a guerrilla war. And we had an envoy who actually came and said, the KLA are a terrorist unit.
But never officially. It was only an announcement for press.
Yeah, only a stupid announcement for the press. But he said it. But in any case, it became a guerrilla war. And unfortunately, I think it was a classic war where all the guerrillas have to do is not lose to stay in the game. It's sort of like in Iran now. Iran doesn't have to beat the United States. All Iran has to do is stay in the game, and it will win. And it was the same in Kosovo. That they would shoot a few rounds into an army jeep passing by a village, and then your troops would come in very harshly to respond. And so that this way this was looking was that there's a lot of excess damage being done in response to what the Albanians were doing. I'm not saying this is right or wrong. I will say that Madeleine Albright was in charge of our foreign policy, and she really hated Milosevic. And she put a guy down to being in charge is what was happening in Kosovo. And he very famously came upon one massacre in Račak. You probably know that. And it was very quick to say this is a massacre. And that was the news that went out all around the world. And it was that sort of coverage that led to our bombing campaign, which was unfortunate. Both sides totally misunderstood each other. Milosevic thought, they're threatening bombing. They'll bomb for a couple of days and then it'll stop. And we thought, we'll bomb for a couple of days, we'll scare Milosevic and he'll give in. And we were both wrong. And so we had to cajole NATO in the first place to engage in this bombing campaign. A lot of countries, particularly the Greeks, but others as well, really didn't want to do it. But they agreed to start it. And then we had to keep it going because we realized if it stops, we'll never be able to get it restarted again. So it was stupid because every day they had to find new targets. And it was terrible. I think it was a big mistake.
And to have some kind of agreement between allies about the target and so on. Yes.
Yeah, but I would also point out that your president gave a very good talk a few days ago on British TV. And he cites this specifically as opening a Pandora's box to unilateral attacks by countries on another country.
And especially proclamation of independence of Kosovo, because if you preserve borders, in any case, your colleague from the United Kingdom, Sir Charles Crawford, he said once to late Prime Minister Đinđić, we are aware that we ask you very strange thing. We tell you in Bosnia, you kill each other, you rape each other, you pillage each other, but you have to live together. And Kosovo, you have history as well. You kill each other, you rape each other, you pillage each other, but you have to live divided. And that's the destiny of all diplomats of great powers. It's hard to explain from time to time.
Yeah.
Dr. Montgomeri, what was your the strongest impression from transition Serbia, those first 4 or 5 years of Serbia in the 21st century?
Well, I do think we came here, well, Bill was here 9 months before me, but we came during that time of Milosevic being taken to The Hague. All of what that entailed, all the different situations around it. You remember probably that night when Milosevic was taken. So there was all the lead up to that, the aftermath of that. Then the early years with Đinđić. I remember being here at the White Palace with him and his new government. A lot of experts, a lot of people with a lot of international experience. I think there was a great deal of hope. You were transitioning from a wartime economy into what you hoped would be a fair and democratic capitalist economy. And then, of course, the assassination of Đinđić. We lived next door to them, of course. Martial law. And all that time. So, life goes on. Your children come home from school. Your children go back to school. Some type of diplomatic life is going on, although I would say in some ways a more interesting diplomatic life because these are real issues. It's not the normal have a glass of champagne.
Excuse me for interruption.
Yes, please.
Did I understand correctly that your children, or maybe one child, attended Serbian school?
We had a daughter who went for 3 years in Zagreb to a Croatian school. And I say in the book she cried every morning. And then when I picked her up in the afternoon, she just bounced into the car. And I said, how was it? She was fine. I made a new friend or whatever it was. And then the next morning she would cry again. But after about 6 months, she stopped crying. And we sent her to live with a Croatian family on the coast in the summers. And then when we came, she went in Hungary to the English school and learned some Russian. And then we brought her to Belgrade, and she went to a Serbian school in Banovo Brdo.
Your children, they're heroes.
So they were all there under this martial law, all three of them. And I remember 2 or 3 days after, they said, can we go into Belgrade? We take a taxi. Can we just go? And I said, okay. Go, you must be back by, 11, and off they went. So this is always this slightly schizophrenic years in Belgrade of these horrible events for the Serbs. Horrible. Not for us. We're insulated to some extent, but horrible events going on, traumas, and yet at some point life is going on.
By all means, that's history, all of it.
But can I add that I didn't know what we'd find when we came back from Budapest after the bombing campaign. But what we found is not one incident in 4 or 5 years here directed against any one person in the American embassy or our families or anything.
Yeah.
Everybody was nice and friendly with us. They might have hated our government.
That's good to hear.
But no, it was great. And that's why, even though there's martial law, people on the intersections with guns, we let our children go in a taxi to the heart of Belgrade because we had no fears that anything would happen to them. And of course, we were right.
We have now much of discussion in Serbian press and media about so-called colored revolution. Was the October the 5th the colored revolution, the first one?
Yes.
It was.
Yes.
Because in your book you mentioned that you were surprised that everything went so smoothly. Milosevic changed constitution, then opportunity came, opposition to unite, they wanted to unite, and I understood that even those funds, which were very, very big, if we could believe to Tim Marshall and Shadow Game or Play of Shadow, I don't remember the exact title, it was about $60 million. Then it was like 130 million today, I think.
It was more.
It was more. But with support of Albanians, it would happen in 1997 or in 1993. But independent Kosovo was so important in the United States.
Yes, well, I can say that you had a lot of things going for you. And, first of all, the world really despised Milosevic's tactics and the wars it brought on. You had a great set of leaders, experienced leaders ready to take over with a plan and very articulate, and it worked. But maybe it looks easy, but it was a lot of hard work over many, many months.
I noticed here that you were in very, very good relations with Prime Minister Đinđić, and you are probably, according to my opinion, in 70 years' time, the most benevolent and most supportive ambassador of the United States to, let's say, not to the Serbian people or Yugoslavia, but for the justice, because, the good politics of one country is not always just. It was said by, Stratford Ratcliffe during the Crimean War.
Right.
However, I would pose the question which could be similar to that detective question. How did it happen that Biljana Plavšić survived 1997 and Đinđić perished in 2003?
Well, I worked very closely with Vilijam Plavšić when I was working on Bosnia. And as you probably know, she was the president of the Republic of Srpska, and I think Karadzic was the prime minister.
He was stripped of all functions then.
Yeah, and his office was in Pali. Hers was in Banja Luka. And we had a delegation there. Our effort, among other things, was to return people to their houses, because there had been how many tens of thousands of refugees?
Hundreds of thousands.
Hundreds of thousands. And so we started by going to Pali and got no help, because we had identified this one village, which was in Republika Srpska, but it had been more than half occupied by Bosnian Muslims who wanted to go back, and the people in this village were willing to welcome them back. Now, we were also going to provide technical assistance to improve the waterways,
Of course.
everything else.
Supplies.
Yeah, so that everybody would win. And in Pali, the answer was absolutely not. So we went to Vilijam, and she said, okay, do it. So this split the leadership of Republika Srpska, and from then on, we just worked with her.
Your Excellency, I fully understand it, but I thought about the assassination, because all those efforts, Biljana Plašić to be assassinated, were, stopped, especially by intelligences, mainly by U.S. intelligence, CIA, while Đinđić, he was, during 3 months official target, and nothing happened. There was no divine intervention.
This was the mistake of Đinđić's security people. Totally.
They refused any help and any advice.
I have a vivid memory of exactly where he was killed, because I went there probably 30 times, because it was the government building. And my driver, every time, not in my direction, but he just knew, would drive me to this underground entrance, which was comfortable enough, easy to get out of the car. Elevator right there would take you up. I wouldn't even have to check in at the front desk. I would just go up to the 3rd or 4th floor, wherever, the person was I was meeting. And it wasn't any problem. I saw Đinđić the day that he was almost assassinated, when he was in a car driving. And a truck driven by Bugsy, one of the Zeman gang, tried to run his car off the road. They had a machine gun across the way that would then kill him.
Yes, an RPG as well.
Yeah, RPG. Okay. But the driver was too skillful and managed to avoid it. And that night I went over to his house, the last time I saw him. And he said, well, this was serious. These guys are serious. They're really after me. But I can't make a big deal about this attempt, because they'll look like I'm a fraidy cat, because nothing happened to me, actually. But he knew very well it was extremely serious. I should add that I was seated at a table next to me, and I looked out and I picked up a book. It was a book of the speeches of our World War II President, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And I said, what's this? And he said, I'm reading it to see if there's anything I can learn from my speeches. And that was almost the last thing he said to me. I said goodbye. And then he went to the place I'm telling you about, the the headquarters building. He was on crutches. He had every reason to go in exactly the same way I went, and he didn't do it. He went through the main stepped entrance.
The official explanation was that there were some construction workers inside.
And it was not true. And that exposed him to the assassin who was waiting in a building across the way. But there was every reason for him to use that inside part because he was on crutches. So he was going to have to walk up 20 steps in any case.
It was an easy target, yes.
It was easy. And the thing of it is, he and his people knew damn well how serious it was. We didn't know when he was first assassinated. We didn't know enough. We knew he was assassinated. And we were brought in a couple of hours later to the foreign ministry for a briefing. And Jovanovich was there, coming back from exile. And a couple of other people. I know Jovich was the head, but Ene Popov was there. And they all knew exactly what happened because they knew that Djindjic had indicted the Zeman gang at long last.
Yeah, I think that you are familiar with that book which shaped our view towards the assassination. Miloš Vasić, journalist of Vremena, late Miloš Vasić, who published that book supported by B92 and so on, Assassination on Zoran Djindjic. You have read it or maybe heard about it. It was very, very supported by media and so on, and it was some kind of official truth of government of Zoran Živković who succeeded. For me, it was very, very interesting that I found out in that book something what was not in any way commented by U.S. government, embassy of United States. That is that Zeman gang had a guy who was some kind of their associated member. I don't know what was inside the geography, which was associated to CIA. Some person, his name he died as well, Čedomir Mihajlović. That's interesting that nobody commented it, and I think that Miloš Vasić, he published it 3 or 4 times in a couple of 100,000 copies.
I never knew anything about it, and as the ambassador here, we knew nothing about that at all. And we didn't have any official warnings about what was going to happen. But as you may know, one of the leaders of the gangs, whose name I now forget, got into a war with the head of the Zeman gang that resulted in his trucks all being destroyed.
Yes, Ljubiša Buhačume from
Čume. Čume. Okay, so Čume goes off to Istanbul, where an assassin comes, gets the wrong room number, and so doesn't manage to kill him. Čume, scared to death, calls a contact in Serbia. I think it was Ene Popov.
By your means. Your friend, Ene Popov.
Yes, yeah. And he calls the British officer in Zagreb.
Vienna.
Yes.
And Vienna,
he was sent to Slovakia and was protected.
Yes. He was sent to Slovakia and interrogated. Yeah, and this was done by the British without telling us. So we had no idea that this had happened. We had no idea that he was in Slovakia or what he was saying.
It's interesting. I thought that there is that 5 eyes system between, English-speaking countries, which is related to intelligence.
So did we.
Thank you very much. At the very end, I would like to hear from Your Excellency and from you, Dr. Montgomeri. you presented yourselves and approved yourself as a friend of these people, and thank you very much for it. And your books, they are so valuable for us, especially because there are 2 books and one of them was written by 2 hands. Your opinion, was it worth for you personally, and all sacrifices regarding children and so on, and was transition successful for Serbia?
Do you want to go first?
No.
I would say first of all, yes, it was successful because I met so many great Serbs, not just Djindjic, Labus, wonderful guy, Dinkic, who I fought with all the time because he didn't want to use the American dollar. Others, I mean, Jovic. There was a lot of very, very good guys who wanted to achieve something, and I thought something was achieved. At the same time, I think that the assassination of Zoran Djindjic was a tragedy for your country, because I think he was a very good leader. And your path might have been a little different if that would not have happened. But I still have a lot of positive hopes for your future.
Thank you very much.
I have to try to think. I think the transition was well worth it. I think whatever Bill and I put in, especially Bill, of course, was the minimum we could do. Because if you're doing this work, you're called to do it well and to do it with integrity and to do it with enthusiasm. That's how I see diplomacy. I think it's for the Serbian people themselves to say where they believe they are now. Is it enough? Could there be more? What will they look like in 10 years? I have great faith in the people of the region, actually, and I do see great changes in the region. And I think that we did our best during the time that we were here, and in Croatia and in Bulgaria. But other people will also judge that. So.
Thank you very much for your
very welcome.
Very, very interesting book and for our
very interesting
conversation.
Questions.
Yes, thank you.
And just one last word. It's not by accident that we are still living in the Balkans.
I understood it as some kind of message. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Uvaženi gledalci, hvala vam veliko na pažnji. Naši gosti su bili bivši ambasador u Srbiji i Crnoj Gori, gospodin Vilijam Montgomeri i njegova supruga, doktorka Lynn Montgomeri, autori ove vrlo zanimljive knjige Nediplomatski životi. Ja vam želim laku noć.